And tonight on the Daily Wrap, we knew Donald Trump is tough on immigration, but do you know how much his immigration plan would cost us? The number may shock you. Hillary Clinton getting angry over questions regarding her email scandal. But what may really be ticking her off is how close Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are getting to her in the polls. And yet another Planned Parenthood video has come out with an even more disturbing narrative. We've got all that, plus your viewer comments. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host Rick Unger. It's supposed to be the dog days of summer, and yet 1,000 things to talk about tonight.
It's remarkable. This is such a gift for those of us who do this for a living. August is usually nothing to talk about. We talk about our home movies and our vacations on television. Not this year.
Your co-host Michael Steele on Sirius says that this will be the most entertaining couple of months in political history.
Yeah, well, he's made some pretty bold predictions on our show on Saturday. Michael basically came out and said that the candidates will be Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
That's right. I heard that this morning.
I disagreed, by the way, but that's what he's saying.
Of course, you think that Sanders won't be in. Anyway, to his right, he's a former FBI special agent, a former Navy SEAL,
with a Trump hat.
Also doing improv as well downtown at the Comedy Cellar. When he isn't the president of Continued Services, Jonathan Gilliam with the Trump hat is here. Welcome. And finally, he is the assistant online editor for Commentary Magazine. No hats, no nothing, no frills, just Noah Rothman. Big smiles. Okay, everyone, let's get right to the Daily Download. 2016 Republican frontrunner Donald Trump is closing in on Hillary Clinton, really, now making the presidential race a competitive one. Check out this new CNN ORC poll today. Hillary 51, Trump 45. What makes that notable? Just last month, the margin was 17 points. In June, it was 24. So we got a horse race, everyone, and no doubt that's a big story, and it's also frustrating to both the Clinton campaign as well as Trump's Republican rivals.
If you're born here, you're an American, period. Period.
But there are many lawyers are saying that's not the way it is in terms of this. What happens is they're in Mexico, they're going to have a baby, they move over here for a couple of days, they have the baby. No, but Bill, they're saying it's not going to hold up in court.
Do you envision federal police kicking in the doors in barrios around the country, dragging families out and putting them on a bus? Do you envision that?
Bill, I don't think they have American citizenship.
All right, we talked about this somewhat last night. We're going to go a little deeper and talk about the 14th Amendment. We'll talk to the only lawyer at the table. First, in very layman terms, what is the 14th Amendment, and why do you think it will be so hard to get a constitutional amendment to modify it?
The 14th Amendment is a lot of things, but what's key to this issue, in this context, it basically states that if you are born in this country or you were made a naturalized citizen and you are subject to critical sentence, actually, the jurisdiction of this country, then you are a citizen.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Trump went on Bill O'Reilly last night and made the argument that essentially that the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. I don't think a part of the Constitution can be unconstitutional because it's the Constitution. So I'm not quite clear how he gets to that. But nevertheless, the reality is that there have been efforts to make the case that certain people aren't covered by the 14th Amendment. Those efforts were made over 120 years ago, and for a brief 14-year span, it actually was the law because the Supreme Court came down in a certain way. I won't get too technical about it, but it was overturned by the Supreme Court. That made it clear that anybody born in this country subject to the jurisdiction means you are obligated to obey the laws of the United States. If you're born here and you're obligated to obey the laws, you are a citizen. So anchor babies, no anchor babies, like it or not, that is the law. You can change it if you want, but it would take, you can challenge it in court,
right,
and I think you'd lose, but you can do it, or you can look for a constitutional amendment.
No, well, let's talk about the cost that I've been heard bandied about as far as if you were to deport 11 million illegal immigrants. Not even so much the cost, but the time as well. I've heard anywhere from 20 to 40 years logistically it would take to get that many people out of the country. So I guess my question is, Trump is a smart guy. He knows this. Is this more of just a symbolic statement you think he was making, saying we have illegals here and we need to do something about the problem?
Yeah, none of this is actionable policy. All of this is throat clearing and positioning statements. If we were to pretend as though this was a feasible approach, his plan calls for the tripling of ISIS, which is also the budget, and as well as their 20,000 individuals. So you're talking about 80,000 people. To get 20 million individuals out of this country, wherever they may be, you're going to require a lot more than that. It would require something on the order of an army, an occupational force, in order to get these people out of this country. And then his process is actually amnestization. It's to take these people, remove them from the country to their countries of origins, which is everywhere, all over the planet.
It's and not just Mexico.
Not just Mexico, and primarily actually Central America. Mm-hmm. And then you're talking about finding the terrific ones and bringing them back into the country so they can be amnestized. This is the most costly amnesty program that we've ever encountered in this country.
And it's even worse than that. Everything Noah said is correct. But what we have to add to that is, like it or not, these people are entitled under law to due process. They get to go to a hearing to see if they should be deported or not. So now you have to add all those judges and all those courtrooms to it. The estimate has been, what, 166 billion?
We've heard a lot of them,
I
but it's
promise
not cheap.
you that is way, way low. And that's based on a process that would take 5 years. I guarantee you this couldn't be done in less than 20. You're looking at $1 trillion here, folks.
So let's say, Jonathan, that Trump were to go to court or try to get a constitutional amendment if he became president, and then he failed. He could say, look, I tried, all right, this is what I wanted to do. Is a more feasible option to take anybody who's been convicted of a crime here that's illegal and at least deport them? In other words, I'm trying to find how a sensible way to do this that would appease people that would elect him.
I think that would be the first thing, besides building a wall, or in my case what I was saying, building bases and a wall along the borders to secure it so nobody else comes in.
Explain your bases idea first. I haven't heard that yet.
So I think, we have all these different military bases all over the country, and under Donald Trump, rightfully so, I think we should build up the number of people that want to join the military. If you want to be in, let them be in. And then you build military bases along the border where where it's feasible, so that you have military operations, training exercises, and constant patrols along those areas, as well as a wall where you can do that. It's going to increase the manpower unbelievably. So the first problem, though, we have is not letting anybody back in here illegally, because if we just start deporting people, they're flooding in here at such a rapid rate that you would just be, constantly cycling people through. After you get it secured, then I say we look at the people who are doing harm. Secondly, we look at the people who've been here multiple times and deported because they're felons. And then you start looking at who does things right and who's doing things wrong that live here. Now, one thing you have to realize is that law enforcement, we already have the manpower. So when you say this is going to cost this much money, the manpower, which is one of the biggest costs, those people are already at work. It's not really good. Yeah, but we have a lot.
Not for Trump's proposal, maybe for yours. Right.
Yeah. So we do have the people there, the manpower to do some of this stuff. But I think overall, the other part of this thing that we need to look at is, why are people coming here? Are they coming here specifically to have a baby so that they can then have that baby here? That is something I think that the Constitution can look at, and constitutional scholars should start looking at. If your sole purpose is to come here and get a baby and have a baby in here.
The Constitution does not give you those definitions. It just doesn't.
No, what I'm saying is
you can change it.
That's what I'm saying. If you want to change anything, that's what you should be changing.
I think there's a fundamental assumption here that's actually a little erroneous, in that the only people who come here to have children are illegal immigrants who are poor and destitute. That's fundamentally not the case. Sure. You have very wealthy individuals from other countries coming here to want to have American citizenship, and they have their children in New York hospitals in order to have access to citizenship and education and all the associated benefits.
Part of the report when you fill out to come in here should be, if you're 9 months pregnant, you can't come over here.
Right. All right.
But they're not filling out the report. They're coming illegally. That's the issue.
Exactly.
So quickly, we always talk about turning points with Trump, and will this hurt him, and will things finally begin to reverse themselves as far as polls? Does this hurt him, or stay the course because it's a strong message regardless of whether it's pragmatic or not?
I think the people who love it, and they're going to continue to.
Jonathan?
I think so.
Hard to say. People aren't looking at serious stuff. So
okay, we'll leave it there. We want to know what you think about Donald Trump's comment about anchor babies. Should the Huffington Post move him to the politics section of their site? We want to talk about that a little bit later. But first, let us know by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. And if you want to make your own, or get your own, Make America Great hat again, just like the one Donald Trump wears, go to the newsmax.com/TrumpCap or go to 1-800-933-8396. Coming up more Daily Wrap in just a moment.
What you're seeing now is a disagreement between agencies saying, you know what, they should have, and the other saying, no, they shouldn't. That has nothing to do with me.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Democratic presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton is once again on the defensive about her use of private emails for official business as Secretary of State. Usage that may have involved improperly sending and receiving classified government data. Things got a little testy, as you're about to see in this exchange with Fox News reporter Ed Henry, when he asked her whether she wiped the data disk on her personal email server.
Did you wipe the server?
What, like with a cloth or something? Well, no. I don't know how it works digitally at all. I do not have any. Ed, I know you want to make a point, and I can just repeat what I have said. In order to be as cooperative as possible, we have turned over the server. They can do whatever they want to with the server to figure out what's there or what's not there.
Well, guys, is Hillary starting to crack under the pressure of this email controversy? She got pretty out of sorts during that press conference.
Look, for starters, I talk about optics a lot in my columns and on this show. And here's the thing. If you're running the Hillary Clinton campaign, don't dress her in orange jumpsuits.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
You know what?
That's a big old ball of wrong.
That's not my thing, but I take your point completely. Yeah.
Especially if you're going to minimize crimes, which is what criminals do.
Yep, there it is.
Because everybody in prison is innocent.
She doesn't look too bad. I don't know.
Everybody in prison is innocent. You know, they're all innocent. They say, you know, and she's sitting here minimizing what she's done, and she's wearing orange. It just looks like Shawshank Redemption, you know. The talk show.
Noah, you want to comment on her clothing?
I'll actually pass on commenting on her regular pantsuit choice. That display was as contemptuous as anything I've seen a politician do with a reporter, the kind of behavior that you have with the reporter. She resents this process so deeply, and she can barely contain her irritation over being questioned over what is essentially a criminal matter at this point, and really a dereliction of her responsibility and the jeopardization of American national security.
But is it resentment, or is it just an effort to try and get away from the conversation?
I think it's twofold. I think it's a theatrical attempt to project to her supporters that this is baseless, that she's a victim, that she's being persecuted, and it's also her unrestrained contempt for the press, which has been very thinly veiled over the course of this presidential campaign.
Well, guess what, guys? It's not working very well. That CNN poll that came out today showing that Hillary Clinton's lead over Donald Trump is now just down to 6 points also asked voters about the email controversy. This is what they said. 56% believe that she did something wrong. That's up from 51% in March. So is this feeding into her overall drop in the polls to Republicans and her Democratic rival Bernie Sanders? We know it is. I mean, over half of those polled believe that she did something wrong. Jonathan, how do you survive that as a candidate for anything?
I just think she's on a downward slope. And what scares me, though, is that she's still getting that high of a rating when she's done something that's obviously criminal, and the guy that's creeping up on her is a socialist. What's wrong with the Democratic Party here?
That's actually an interesting question, and it's not just the Democratic Party in those things. Why does she still have that high of a number? I mean, if you look at it, you know, in the larger picture, she's dropping. She's at her lowest numbers, but it is still a pretty high number.
I mean, there's got to be some other Democrats.
If over half the people think she did something wrong, and in this case, something wrong very well might mean having broken the law, having committed felonies when it comes to our classified data, why is she still winning?
They would take a candidate that has committed a felony or a criminal act over Republicans controlling all three change.
You think that's it?
Yes, yeah. They were. You've said this before in the show. It's more
No,
about
then it
voting.
must be right.
You're voting against the other party more than you're voting for your candidate. And if they had any viable alternative on their bench, they would ditch her in a heartbeat. But they realize they don't until at least Joe Biden jumps in, or Mike Bloomberg that I wrote yesterday. That's when you'd see them jump ship. But in the meantime, they're clinging to hope that she could somehow survive this because she's their only hope right now.
Their only choice right now. Noah, just there was a I think it happened last night. Donald Trump said that he thought that Hillary could get up to 20 years in jail for what he believes she's done. Not that Donald Trump would ever exaggerate. But how do you explain, and how would he explain, that this person who he thinks should be getting 20 years in jail is still beating him in the polls?
I think it might be a little bit simpler than the grand civic nature of American public who wants to actually see divided government. I think it's August of an off year, and a lot of people just haven't tuned into the process yet. And I also think, by the way, if Republicans weren't in this cul-de-sac of debating the 14th Amendment, and we're actually on message and talking about message-related stuff, there would be absolute outright panic in the Democratic Party and a push for her to drop out of the race. I think you're going to see that eventually pretty soon, because Martin O'Malley is screaming that we're not talking about anything but emails. Everybody's starting to realize that they can't get their message out. It's all emails all the time, and that's eventually going to start to wear on Democrats who want to actually make their case to the public.
He's got a good point, Jonathan. He's got a good point, because the only, the people who I see talking about, aside from geeks like us, this whole 14th Amendment thing, are angry members of the base who are on their Twitter accounts, who are saying, no, the court, I mean, they never meant that, all this crazy stuff. Right. So is Noah right? Is it just that it's so early? All we're picking up are the showbiz aspects and the people who are committed, and it's not real yet?
I think that could be the case. Plus, you got to look at who's being polled. They're polling people who right now are involved in watching these things. Those are people who are going to support Hillary Clinton because they hate the Republicans so much. So the polls, I think, right now are even kind of skewed because of that.
Polls,
because of what,
I think that's probably true, because polls, Joe, they're always skewed this early on. Right?
Who benefits right now is Bernie Sanders. It's been a 20-point swing in 1 month. She's lost 10 points. He's gained 10 points.
A socialist.
It's true. The question is, will there be any other candidates in the Democratic primary? We'll hopefully find out soon. In the meantime, let us know what you think about this email server mess. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Coming up next, Donald Trump is closing in on Hillary Clinton, and so is Bernie Sanders, but we talked about that, but we're going to talk about it some more. This is the Daily Wrap.
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Let's check in with the venerable Steve Malzberg and see what he has planned for tonight. Steve, hey.
All right, thanks, Joe. Coming up, Dick Morris will join us. He has his theory as to who is behind the effort to get Hillary Clinton. Not that he doesn't think it's all legitimate, but you might be surprised. Also, on the Malzberg panel, we'll talk Hillary. We'll talk Donald Trump, who now trails Hillary by just 6 points in the latest CNN national poll, and Rosie O'Donnell. What about Rosie? You may not know this, but you will. Keep it tuned right here after the Daily Wrap, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're next.
Steve always looks best in green. I tell him to wear. Anyway, a double whammy in the polls today for Hillary Clinton. Let's talk about her a little bit more. As we mentioned already, Donald Trump closing the gap between him and Hillary. But now, in that same poll out today, also shows that left-wing rival, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, gaining ground as well. Hillary now below 50% in 2 major polls. That's very, very important considering where she was in the 60s not too many months ago. Bernie Sanders now at 29%. Joe Biden, who hasn't even announced, is already at 14%. And poor Martin O'Malley, probably should hang it up already, 2%. Lincoln Chafee, not discussed. Or Mr. Webb as well, who we thought would do a little bit better. But anyway, if you're the Clinton campaign, how do you respond to these numbers, Noah Rothman?
You don't respond to these numbers, not just because they're...
Well, not publicly. I mean, how do you alter your campaign if you think it's going in the wrong direction?
If they would alter their campaign that's going in the wrong direction, they would have done something to mute this damage that's been done to her by this email scandal. I believe that the Democratic Party is, the Democratic primary voter is tuned into this email scandal, but they generally dismiss it. It's probably affecting the vote, but only on the margins. What's really moving the vote on the Democratic side is a genuine appreciation of what Bernie Sanders is bringing to the race, which is really dogmatic, hard, left-wing politics. The Democratic Party is a far-left party at this stage. And only just today we realized that that New York City mayor Bill de Blasio, who's about as left-wing as you could possibly get, may be drawing a challenger from his left in city public advocate Letitia, I'm blocking on her last name, but the public advocate who occupies
Queen
the job.
Letitia, we call her.
Occupies the job he used to have. This is the direction that the Democratic Party is going in. It wants to go as far left as it possibly can, and Bernie Sanders is that vehicle.
Before you jump in, do you think also, I agree with Noah's points, but do you think it's something as simple as Bernie honest, Hillary not honest?
No, and I have to disagree with the entire premise, Noah, of what you're arguing. Bernie Sanders is attracting crowds of 100,000 people. And yet
100,000 people.
28,000 was a high
20. Oh, okay. I don't want to exaggerate. I thought I heard that they had one huge one. 28,000. He's filled a stadium. Yes. 28,000 people, thousands and thousands. That's all we're talking about. And yet he's only at 28% versus Hillary Clinton being at 40 whatever. If I'm the Clinton campaign, I'm sitting there going, I can't believe that I've taken the beating I've been taking, and I'm still leading this in double digits. So I think it proves that the party is not going as far left.
I think you're very much moving the goalposts. Very much moving the goalposts. Only 28% was unfathomable 3 months ago.
Well, before Hillary Clinton turned out to maybe be facing an indictment.
Single digits.
Before Hillary Clinton was possibly facing an indictment.
I don't think
Jonathan, jump in.
No.
I think we need to make Vermont the next enemy and the next Jade Helm military operation for giving us Bernie Sanders, first of all.
To our friends in Vermont, he didn't mean that. We love you.
Particularly those of you have cousins.
Then send me some mail and tell me why you elected a socialist.
Because this is America and they can elect whoever they want.
Well, they elected a socialist, which we're not a socialist country.
The most Republican state in the Union up to about 30 years ago.
That's right.
Was Vermont.
When they got invaded.
Yeah. More than
bizarre.
Texas.
Absolutely bizarre.
Alabama, all the southern states.
As red as you could possibly get in
what
the 80s.
What the heck happened?
Socialism, man.
As far as the Hillary thing, though, and the Democratic Party going left, you have to agree with me on this, Rick. The Democratic Party has become more concerned with its definition of where they stand versus what's effective in leadership. They're more in.
I can make that same exact statement about Republicans.
I'm talking about the party.
So is that what's happening in the Republican Party? They're more concerned about where they stand if they're a Tea Party.
Yes.
I don't think that's true, really.
I think
one more story to tell you about. Labor leaders are in a bit of a bind. While Hillary Clinton's union ties go back to her husband's days as president, some union leaders are not happy she hasn't spoken out against the president's specific trade deal. Bernie Sanders has been one of the more vocal critics of that deal, as you know. He wants universal health care and free college. Will the labor unions vote with their hearts or their heads, Rick Unkes?
It's a great question. There's a lot of stress right now amongst the labor unions as to what they want to do. I think right now they're going to sit on their hands and wait and see, but they do. I mean, she has not racked up. I mean, Bernie's gotten one. He got the nurses union to support him. To the best of my knowledge, Hillary has not gotten a key endorsement from any unions. It's a problem for her.
No, quickly.
I think she won the endorsement actually of the Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten's union.
Right.
But beyond that, no.
Okay. So why do you think Hillary Clinton hasn't said anything about President Obama's specific trade deal, of substance anyway? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Also, we want to know who your choice is for the 2016 nomination. Let us know at newsmaxpolls.com. Coming up, there's another Planned Parenthood video out, and it's disgusting. We'll tell you about that next.
Finally, the woman, she calmed down, and the doctor went in to perform the abortion. Takes a little while, and I'm in the hallway. I see the jar come out, goes into the path lab, and Jessica, I can hear, is preparing it, rinsing out the jar, rinsing out the linen, the wrapping that catches it, dumping it in the strainer, rinsing it off, putting water in the pie dish, and getting it ready for the doctor. So then I hear her call my name, "Hey Ollie, come over here. I want you to see something kind of cool. This is kind of neat." So I'm over here, and this is the moment I see it, I'm just flabbergasted. This is the most gestated fetus and closest thing to a baby I've seen. And she's like, "Okay, I want to show you something." So she has one of her instruments and she just taps the heart and it starts beating. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this fetus and its heart is beating. And I don't know what to think.
Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. That was former STEM Express employee Holly O'Donnell in the latest video from the Center for Medical Progress talking about a late-term aborted fetus heart beating in a Petri dish. Now, this video, like the others, features Planned Parenthood employees and officials talking about its common practice to alter the way in which a fetus is aborted so that they can keep as much of the fetus intact for procedural purposes.
Yeah, and so if we alter our process and we are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, then we can make it part of the budget that any dissections are this, and splitting the specimens into different shipments is this. I mean, it's all just a matter of line items.
And once again, here's Holly O'Donnell.
I remember I was on my day off and I went on my laptop and popped up and they were working, and I saw a message saying that the doctor had aborted a fully intact fetus. Fully intact, and STEM Express was sending us straight to the lab.
Now let's hear from a procurement manager for Advanced Bioscience Resources.
I literally have had women come in and they'll go in the OR and they're back out in 3 minutes, and I'm going, what's going on? Oh yeah, the fetus was already in the vaginal canal whenever we put her on stirrups, it just fell out.
Guys, I'm going to start off by saying this. You know, it's no secret that I've been a supporter of Planned Parenthood over the years, not necessarily the abortions, but the good things that they do. But I cannot for the life of me understand how there has been no Department of Justice investigation that has begun. You know, I don't know what it takes. These videos are making me absolutely nauseous. No?
I know why there's no Justice Department investigation. All there is, at least into the Center for Medical Progress that's performing these videos, is because this is a protected organization. I'm going to get a little bit graphic here because that video deserves to be discussed in some detail. At about 6 minutes into the video, you see an aborted fetus, which is a fully formed baby. It's moving, it's viable, and it is summarily executed. They describe later on the process of removing the child's brain by taking a pair of scissors to his face. This is the kind of thing that is grotesque, it's Nazi-esque, it absolutely needs to be discussed in far more detail, and it's not being discussed in far more detail because I don't think we as a society really want to stomach what we're funding.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I saw it. It's just unbelievable. Jonathan, can Planned Parenthood, let's set aside whether Planned Parenthood should survive this. Can they survive this?
I don't know. This was probably the biggest thing that I've seen right here. I mean, look, first off, the name Planned Parenthood, there's no parenthood about this part of that wing. I don't know how they're shielding what they do underneath that name. But, you know, listen, the Department of Justice needs to look into this. The Constitution and the federal government, their number one job is to protect our lives. If there is a human fetus that is still alive, first off, science can't tell us where life begins. So, you know, my stance on that is that if science can't tell us, then the Constitution has to protect life. But if these people are taking a formed fetus and saying, hey, check this out, and tapping the heart and it beats, and then murdering that fetus, to me, that's no different than if I murdered you right now. They should go to jail, they should face a death penalty, and they should, or if not, life in prison.
Well, obviously there's disagreement on that, although I take your point. Joe, I mean, where do we go with this at this point? And I'm going to look into the camera and say it. Everybody knows that I support the Obama administration on a great many things. If the Department of Justice does not open up an investigation into this, and I mean damn soon, then you can expect me to talk about it on radio, on TV, and in articles darn near every day until you do.
Good for you. If I was the group that put together this video, I would have gone with this one first.
Yeah,
instead of
I
the
agree
other
with
ones.
that.
This is the most effective.
This is all you needed.
This is emotional stuff. And you said exactly, this is Nazi-esque, and the Planned Parenthood needs funding.
It's a problem.
I can't. I don't even want to talk about it.
You know what we think? Now we want to know what you think about this video. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments to let us know. Coming up next, we read some of your viewer comments.
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Let's read some of your viewer comments, but first we want to do something a little bit new. Rick, I understand you've invited a very special guest onto the show. No other show has ever done this before.
No, they haven't. I have invited a special guest. Now, occasionally a viewer shares a particular point of view that calls for an opportunity to participate in a forum that they just can't get on any other news program. One that we call the Skype Viewer Forum. Now, this all began when I received a somewhat disparaging tweet from this particular person, but he made his points, and I thought we should give him a chance to do it on television. So tonight we have our first such guest, Adam Crutchfield in Washington, D.C., who wants to talk about why he is so supportive of the Trump candidacy. Welcome, Adam.
Hey guys, how are you? Thank you for having me on.
We're good. So listen, you were making a pretty passionate case for Mr. Trump, and you wanted an opportunity to tell our audience why you feel the way you do. This is it, man.
Great, great. I think my overarching point, guys, and my overarching message is just that, you know, the Trump base doesn't just consist of far right-wing people. You know, I've heard, I've heard descriptions on, I guess, Newsmax and Fox News, et cetera, that, you know, the Trump base is, you know, right-wing people, even people who feel alienated from society. I don't think, you know, any of that is true. I think that it consists of normal people, you know, including Democrats, and I think it would be mathematically impossible to be polling between, you know, 23 and 33%, and you know, your base only be a fringe group of people.
So, Adam, what do you say when you hear Mr. Trump say what he said on Bill O'Reilly's program last night, effectively stating that the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional? Does it make you scratch your head when somebody says the Constitution can be unconstitutional?
Well, I think that, you know, there are other candidates who are also, I think, supportive of Mr. Trump's policy. I think that, you know, Scott Walker's involved now too.
Yeah, but that doesn't answer the question.
No, I think at the end of the day, you know, Mr. Trump is, you know, putting ideas out there, you know, to help America. And if I think at the end of the day, these things will probably sort themselves out, right? That, you know, it's important to note that he's not alone in these views.
Well, I take your point that he's not alone in his views. I completely understand. But wouldn't you like to think that somebody who wants to be our highest elected official, A, understands the Constitution, and B, doesn't make light of it to the point where he simply says, well, something written in the Constitution is unconstitutional, which is effectively impossible. Yes, there are other candidates who would like to see that policy go through. I understand it. I understand that you and many, many other Americans don't like this anchor baby concept. I get it. But doesn't the person that we're looking to as our leader have an obligation to explain to his supporters, look, this is a tough thing to change. I agree we should change it, but we have to change it in the right way. Is that asking too much of a candidate?
Well, I mean, I think it depends how you really look at it, right? I think that, you know, guys like Mark Levine and, you know, other people who are pretty up on the Constitution, you know, don't think that it's a constitutional issue. But I think that the overarching problem is, you know, just illegal immigration. I think at the end of the day, Trump is trying to address an issue that other politicians simply refuse to address.
Okay. Adam, out of time. Very much appreciate you joining tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe we'll see you here again. Adam Crutchfield in Washington.
Thanks so much, guys.
Joe?
And thanks to Leadership Institute for having me today.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Adam. By the way, I really dislike it when we have guests that outdress us.
I know.
Adam,
he was looking good.
Yeah, that was a well put
he
together.
He was looking good. He's an investment banker. What do you expect?
That's true. Yeah. Okay, our next comment comes from Danielle, who says, and we quote, "If Hillary did not send or receive any confidential or classified mail, then how did she do her job the last 4 years?" A very good point.
It's actually a great question, because if she did everything on her personal email, then you do have to wonder. Not a bad question. Donna says, if Planned Parenthood is a provider for women's health care, which they are, then why is the federal government funding them at all? The federal government funds a lot of providers who provide those services. Wouldn't they be accepting Obamacare insurance for their services? No, Obamacare is not a provider. It is a funder that pays for your medical care. I'm going to cut this one short so we can go on to the next, but I wanted to answer those questions.
Final comment of the evening. Jerry says, we need Donald Trump, exclamation point. Obama and his stupid immigration will turn L.A. into a little TJ.
I think she means Tijuana.
Oh, Tijuana. I love Tijuana. No, thank you. They jumped the border. They need to just get sent back, period. No citizenship.
I think we can squeeze in one more, and we'll do it from Cheryl, who says, just wanted to comment on the discussion the other night about the clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses. Several of you stated she took an oath to do so, yet when she took that oath, there was no law that said she was bound to do any sort of thing. I still cannot believe that anyone would think that any law should be able to give freedoms to one group while taking it away from another.
Okay, well, that does it for our comments tonight. Good stuff, guys. Keep them coming. So remember, if you want to weigh in on any of the issues we talk about here on the show, go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know what you think. And if you want to get your very own Make America Great hat again, just like the one Donald Trump wears, go to newsmax.com/TrumpCap or call 1-800-933-8396. Don't go anywhere. Yay or nay? That's next.
Donald Trump, welcome to Meet the Press.
Well, thank you very much, Ted.
You are a registered Republican.
Correct.
There is a form that is being filed Monday, tomorrow, with the Board of Elections, which says what?
Well, it says that I am joining as of Monday the Reform Party, which in New York is the Independence Party, and I look forward to doing so.
Why are you joining the Reform Party?
Well, for one thing, I really believe the Republicans are just too crazy right. I mean, just what's going on is just nuts.
Okay, welcome back to Daily Wrap. Interesting video there. It's time for Yay or Nay. That, of course, was Donald Trump on Meet the Press back in 1999 with the late, great Tim Russert. If the then potential presidential candidate registered as an independent before, should be shocked if he does it again, Rick Unker.
Well, you know the old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. And when you join them, if you can't lead them, beat them.
Interesting. Jonathan, you're part of the Reform Party. Were you surprised that Trump left you in dire straits?
I think he's going to do what it takes to become president. And I think the heat that he's getting, which is really interesting. I mean, as he rises in polls, he gets trashed more over on Fox News, more and more. It's just very interesting to me how, are they ever going to embrace this? Is there going to be a time when they embrace it?
So you think it's a calculated
maybe
effort?
They shouldn't. Maybe they understand that they shouldn't embrace it.
Well, listen, there's a lot of people.
Thought.
I would say then you can't. The majority of people running for president, you can't. I mean, you can't embrace them for that reason as well.
Just because a lot of people who typically watch your network think something, maybe they feel a responsibility to be more factual.
Do they want a Republican in office or do they not? That's, I know. To me, I want an effective leader, but I'm not a Republican. I'm a conservative. But you know, they have to decide what they want.
Okay. No.
Well, if you're a conservative, you should support a conservative. This is an individual who has no basis for his particular beliefs. His beliefs are whatever they happen to be in the moment. He's said he's pro-choice. He's particularly fond of Vladimir Putin. He wants a progressive tax system. He has flip-flopped on just about every issue you can think of that's a conservative issue. So if he wants to run for the Reform Party, why not? Just create the resurrect the Reform Party and run as an anti-trade, pro-choice, semi-conservative Democrat. That's essentially what he's going to run as.
If I ever run for president, he's my spokesperson right here.
Done and done.
You could do worse.
All right, moving on. 2 soldiers are making history as they get ready to become the first female officers to graduate from the Army Ranger training. This year was the first time women were allowed to enter the grueling training program, which is said to be the most intense, difficult training in the entire military. The women completed the exact same training program as the men, just like in G.I. Jane with Demi Moore, which only 2 in 5 are able to complete. By the way, it is unclear as of now if the women will be able to serve, since they're not allowed to be in that special unit. Jonathan Gilliam, if a Ranger graduates from the program, should he or she be allowed to serve, yay or nay?
No, I mean they can't go serve in the Ranger Battalion until they go through what's called Ranger Assessment. It's RASP. Anyway, I'm losing the name of it now, but they have to go through that. It's an 8-week course, much more difficult. Ranger Assessment Selection Process is what it is. They have to go through that in order to be selected to be a Ranger.
Are they eligible to go through that?
It depends on if they're in the unit.
If they pass, should they be able to serve?
I think there needs to be separate teams for females. That's what I believe.
Okay, appreciate your candor. Rick?
You know, I'm not a military guy, so I don't speak with any authority on it. My basic sense is, look, you know, if you can do it and get through the training, go for it. Yeah. But on the other hand, I have heard things that women in the training are being given longer time periods to complete it than men are, and that's troubling because you're not going to cut any breaks out on the battlefield. And so far, they're not using them, so you wonder what the point is.
Okay, no, quickly?
Yeah, I defer to Jonathan on this. He knows a lot more about the military aspect of it. But the 2016 GOP candidates have embraced it, and it really is just a social experiment, and that's not what the military's for.
Okay, right. Just saying. G.I. Jane, Demi Moore, practically conquered Libya on her own. Anyway, George Zimmerman is back in the news, but not for what you think. The man accused and later acquitted of shooting Trayvon Martin back in 2012 is now selling Confederate flag artwork that promotes the Second Amendment. You can get your own signed Zimmerman artwork online for $50 through a gun supply store in Florida. Will you be buying one, Noah Rothman?
Can't say I'm going to be jumping on that one.
Jonathan, one word answer.
No.
Rick?
No.
Okay, no's across the board. And that's all for tonight. I'm Joe Concha on behalf of Rick Unger and the rest of our esteemed panel. Well done. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us tonight. The Steve Malzberg Show. That's next.